Number 3. Even though it may seem distant now, this story unfolded over a decade ago. Back then, during my later high school years, I found myself home alone. My parents were attending a wedding that required them to stay overnight at a hotel, and my brother was working the night shift. Our family resided in a well-known East Coast city, nestled within a blue-collar neighborhood that was beginning to face some challenges. As a teenager, I tended to keep to myself. I wasn't exactly a social outcast, but I leaned towards introversion despite having friends and occasionally going on dates. I cherished the rare moments of solitude I had. That particular weekend, I was looking forward to my usual routine of having the house to myself, playing PlayStation on the large TV, ordering some late-night takeout, watching episodes of Dragon Ball Z, and eventually drifting off to sleep on the couch with my faithful old dog, Cecil. Cecil, our elderly beagle, had been part of our family for about 8 years. He was a quiet and docile companion, often found either snoozing or subtly hinting for treats. Unlike most beagles, he never had a penchant for howling. Instead, he preferred the comfort of resting his head on someone's lap. Around 1 a.m., as I was dozing off on the couch after finishing the last slice of pizza, I heard a loud noise coming from the back alleyway. Initially, I dismissed it as just another urban disturbance, a common occurrence in the city at night. However, Cecil abruptly lifted his head from my lap, his back bristling with tension. He was always a bit skittish, so I comforted him and tried to settle back into a doze. But mere moments later, another bang echoed through the house, and Cecil reacted in a way I'd never seen before. He sprang off the couch and dashed towards the basement door, barking and growling fiercely. His demeanor resembled that of a trained German shepherd from a police canine unit. Witnessing his unusual behavior sent a surge of adrenaline through me. Amid Cecil's barking, I could now discern a persistent pounding sound. We had a seldom used basement door that opened to the back alley. It was old, rusty, and required considerable effort to open, even with a key. Realization dawned on me. Someone was attempting to break into our house through that basement door. In neighborhoods like ours, there's a common understanding. If an intruder tries to enter but gives up upon encountering a locked door, they likely only seek valuables. However, if they persist despite the barrier, it's clear they're after more than just possessions. They want to harm or confront you. With this in mind, I hurried upstairs to retrieve a heavy wooden baseball bat that I kept beneath my bed for emergencies. Then, I descended to the basement. Looking back, I probably should have rushed, but I was a typical macho teenager with a bravado complex, feeling compelled to confront the threat head-on. As I descended the basement stairs, Cecil zoomed past me with the energy and determination of a dog half his age. Suddenly, I heard a man's voice utter, "Oh, shit," and the pounding ceased. I didn't call the police or anyone else, which in retrospect was the height of foolishness. I remained vigilant for the rest of the night, clutching the bat tightly. When my brother returned home in the morning, I recounted the events to him. He inspected the basement door, and with a tug, the entire thing collapsed. That intruder had been just a shove away from gaining entry, but old Cecil's bravery had scared him off. I firmly believe that lazy old dog saved my life that night. When I recount the tale, some people dismiss Cecil's actions as mere instinct, but I know better. He had never barked or moved with such urgency before. It was as though he sensed the imminent danger, as though he knew that door wouldn't hold. A few years later, we had to bid farewell to Cecil. He had lost his zest for life, and it was time to let him go. Before the final injection, I had a moment alone with him, expressing my gratitude one last time for his companionship and for his heroism that fateful night. By then, I had grown into a man with a family of my own, but I'm certain none of it would have been possible without old Cecil. Number 2. I was lucky enough to live in a large house when I was a kid. My house had a side room towards the back side of the first floor. My siblings called it the second living room because that's basically what it was. It had an old recliner, a small table, and a mid-sized couch. That's it. We hardly ever sat in there. One morning, I woke up sick. I told my mum, and she told me to take the day off from school and stay home. My siblings had to be at school and my parents worked, so that meant I had the house to myself. I laid around in bed for a few hours until around 10:30 a.m. when I heard steady walking coming from the first floor. I thought nothing of it at first, as I just assumed maybe my mom went in late to work like she did sometimes. I needed something to eat anyway, so I stood up and went downstairs to the kitchen. I made it about 3 feet in front of my kitchen's walk-in doorway when I locked eyes with not my mom, but a 6-foot-tall man wearing raggy and ripped-up clothes. I was frozen in fear. I just stood there. It was only for a few seconds, but it felt like hours had passed. The guy just stood there and watched me too. No expression or anything. I eventually pulled myself out of the shock and bolted from my bedroom upstairs. I didn't hear him following me, but I got in my bedroom and locked the door and moved a dresser in front of it anyway. I pulled out my phone, and instead of calling 911 like I should have, I called my mum. I screamed into the phone, telling her someone was in the house trying to kill me. She told me not to leave my room for any reason and call the police, so I did. 15 minutes later, the police finally showed up as I could see through my bedroom window. I watched them enter the house before I left my room to run down to them for safety. I told them everything that happened. They did a quick search of the home and found nothing. Not a single person or broken window or door. My parents came home shortly after and were furious that the guy had not been caught. I was extremely angry as well, but I was also relieved that I was alive. The police began packing their things, but as one of the last officers was on the way out, he noticed a Walmart bag sticking out from under our couch. It was that couch in the side room that no one ever used. Well, what do you know? We found hundreds of trash bags and week-old rotting food under the couch, along with some of our personal items like wipes, water bottles, and we even found a bag of piss. Whoever that man in the kitchen was had been living under our couch for weeks. I can't comprehend how none of us had smelt any of the garbage that was piled up under there for the entire time he was there. The fact that he never made a single noise under there just baffles me. We've since cleaned that room out completely and turned it into a breakfast nook with wooden chairs so no more people can break in and find free housing in them. I go off to college in a few months, so I won't have to live in fear of that incident happening again for much longer, but I still think about it every time I wake up with a cough. Number 1. I was just 13 years old when this eerie incident occurred. Even now, living in the same house, I'm still puzzled by what transpired. Given that our area is prone to thunderstorms and lies in Tornado Alley, I typically slept downstairs in my dad's room as a precaution, being a deep sleeper. Around 12:43 a.m., I was engrossed in watching YouTube on my phone while the rain pounded against the house. Suddenly, I heard the distinct bass of my dad's car pulling into the driveway. Living in a small town where everyone knows each other, his car stood out. Anticipating my dad's arrival downstairs, I gathered my belongings and my dog, sitting expectantly at the edge of the bed. However, minutes passed, and he didn't come down. Curious, I approached the window facing the driveway, offering a clear view of the entire area. Oddly, there was no car in sight. It seemed perplexing, but I brushed it off, assuming I had mistaken a passing car for my dad's. Returning to the bed, I quickly realized the bass sound hadn't dissipated. Though unsettled, I reasoned that cars often parked randomly in the vicinity of houses. As time passed, I heard what seemed like my dad's cough emanating from the garage. Relieved at his apparent return, my relief turned to fear when I realized I hadn't heard the garage door opening. Too frightened to glance out the window again, I sat tight, the storm intensifying outside. Then, I heard my dad's voice calling my name softly. It dawned on me, someone or something was inside the house. Paralyzed with fear, I listened intently, glancing at my dog who seemed oblivious. Striving to remain calm, I lay motionless until I eventually drifted off into an uneasy sleep. I awoke at 4:00 a.m., rushed to the window, and saw my dad's car parked outside. Hastening upstairs, I recounted the unsettling events to him. While I'm not one to believe in ghosts, I couldn't shake the feeling that something other than my father had called out to me that night. I can't help but wonder what might have unfolded had I ventured upstairs in response to that voice. The true nature of that night remains a mystery, but the experience has left me feeling uneasy in my own home.